I would like to come back to the positive side of my presentation and point out that we have to learn the lessons which history created, even if those lessons were created generations ago. And when we are trying to visualize how to deploy a massive empowerment effort, then we will have to identify what could be the former centers of power which would be able to be a platform for such a massive effort. And the historical lesson is that platforms did not work on their own. If I take governments and intergovernmental organizations as a source and center of power, historically, if we go back, the League of Nations was created after the failure of the governmental and intergovernmental system prior to the First World War. A new system was put in place. It was dead on arrival. It failed from practically 1936 onward. Another system was put in place, the UN and the UN system, and there are many important fractures on the edifice of that system. And there is a more informal system emerging as well. So if you take, this is one lesson about how far governments and intergovernmental organizations historically were able to prevent existential threats, like what I was speaking about, major wars. If I take another source of power, then if we go back to the photo of Oppenheimer I showed to you, he was practically embodying the strengths of science and strengths of knowledge to create a value around the prevention of war. Okay? 1961, it turned out that 1962, it was a failure. Not a total failure, but something which did not work. If we go back, and I have here some photos I might quickly show to you because it's a good reminder. Again, this group of scientists, they could not continue their work after 1938, and I don't have the time to explain how this group was dispersed. This is the famous group of the Ragazzi di Via Panisperna, okay, the Physical Institute in Rome. Two Nobel Prize winners among them here. They could not prevent the potential misuse of their scientific research. So they had to stop somewhere in 1938, 1939 doing research. You can imagine you as a 25 years old, you had 4 or 5 good years, and then you stop everything. You give up everything just because of the potential misuse of science. So they couldn't do what was expected they had to do for a very drastic measure. So if I go further down, this is a so-called Solvay Conference of 1927. This is probably the highest concentration of Nobel Prize winners on any photo here. You have the names down there. And again, this group of people picked up the shattered pieces after the First World War and tried to reassemble them, tried to create the type of cooperative discourse between science and science, and they failed. By around the mid-1930s, again they failed. And if I go back, 1911, the first Solvay conference, some of the faces are sitting there, like Einstein was in the first one, he was in the fifth one. Again, they were trying to build values of science around the benefits they were bringing to society, and they failed again. So there is a question: what is the platform? What are the lessons we are learning? And I don't think that anyone has a major bullet here, but let me call your attention to the left-hand side of this matrix. So academia, business, education, governments and IGOs, media, NGOs, religion and faith. This is an alphabetic order. But probably we cannot put an effort like that in one basket, okay? But as in countries which are in troubles, economic, political troubles, there is a big coalition. Okay, it rarely happens that parties are creating a big coalition because normally they are not very comfortable with working together as a coalition. So there might be a need for a big coalition. Okay, big coalition for a big empowerment. And let me recall, if you take Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project, it was described as big science. Why it was described big science? Because the financial investment in the Manhattan Project equaled the capitalization value of the American automobile industry in the 1940s. And this was not a small piece at that time. Okay? US automobile industry capitalization level, the Manhattan Project. So it was clear that once there was an existential threat, there was an imminent threat as well, as recognized by President Roosevelt. A big effort was lined up. Okay, so take the example of big science and call it big empowerment. So there is a need to work with all the willing components of all these centers of power, probably on a voluntary basis from many of them, and to try to put something as massive as, I don't think my numbers are massive enough, to put a massive big empowerment project, and to add to it the techniques which are probably 21st century techniques. So one 21st century technique is mass collaboration, okay? We do not have to explain to each other. Mass knowledge sharing is another 21st century technique with all the new tools. Social media is becoming a platform of its own, and here I am not referring to it as a power center, but as a technique, how to deploy a massive empowerment effort. We have to use education in a new way. I myself invented, it's easier for Hungarians to invent this crazy word, edu-action, where education is focusing more on the action part than on pure transfer of knowledge, edu-action. There are new universities, we were discussing with Barry in the break, which are using like peer tuition and peer control for massive educational efforts. So I don't think that there is one center of power which could support the type of effort we might need in case my worst case scenario is something we cannot easily drop and disregard. And for that we have to work with a big coalition, and we have to use one of the new tools. The final point is that the centers of social power are changing as we speak, and again as an example, it came up in the break. I brought up the notion of X-Space. If some of you recall, Elon Musk initiated with some crazy friends at that time, some 10 years ago, of putting a private spacecraft, SpaceX, yeah, a private spacecraft on orbit. And the reason it was accepted as something to be pursued was the visionary integrity of the people who lined up behind it. Okay? So this is something like a project attracting a massive influx of intellectual energy and capacity, and things were created which NASA could create only with 1 or 2 orders of magnitude higher costs. And it's over. Thank you.